Hi, this is Pat Long. Welcome to the third video in our base SAS certification preparation course. This video is on error handling. This is actually the shortest section that we cover, so let's jump right in. So this next section is on error handling, and in the first subsection of error handling we're going to look at how we identify and resolve programming logic errors. We'll use the put log statement and the data step to help identify logic errors. We'll also use the put log to write the value of a variable. And we'll use the put log with conditional logic that we've already covered in previous videos. And we'll also use temporary variables and error to debug a data step. So let's jump into the code and look at all these bullet points. So first off, we're going to be looking at using the put log statement and the data step to help identify logic errors. In the previous video, we did cover macro variables, so I'm going to make use of them. And in all these videos, I tried to use the SAS help data library, so these are fully reproducible. And the code used in this video is in the description of the video and available on my GitHub page. So what I'm doing here is making back 5 macro variables to update or append a row to the SAS help.class dataset. I can't actually write to the SAS help.class dataset, but I'm making a version of that dataset in my work library that I'm gonna update with these entries that correspond to the column names in the dataset. So let's make the data set. Let's make the data set using a data step, and we're going to call this new student, and it's from SAS help class. And it's quite an involved example of how you will need to update a data set. So just bear with me for a second. And also we're going to be using some conditional logic to screen the entries that we're getting in there. So they're here also I'm using the simget function. I don't believe it's on the exam, but I'm going to be getting the student name, this guy, using the simget function. Here with these ones I can just enter the numerical value. So here I'm going to screen, so height in the SAS help.class dataset is in inches, but I'm pretending like I'm entering my height in centimeters. 180 would be roughly 72 inches. But anything over 100 would be extraordinarily tall, and perhaps we want to not have that entry. So I'm going to do this to screen for that, and I'm just going to enter it as missing because it sounds like it's bad data. And this is where the put log comes in. So we wouldn't necessarily get an entry in the, but using the put log statement, we can get some feedback on that, even though it's not like an error. So there's that, and we'll end it. And then we'll just do else do and in this one we'll say height equals, we'll actually enter the height as given if it does fall within this range, and we'll say the height is a valid number, and it's been set to, we can actually put height in the using the put log statement. So I think we're ready to run this, and of course in this section we'll emphasize that the log, as I have done all along, the log is our friend for letting us know if we have errors, but here we're looking at even if we don't have an error or a warning or a note, we can put one in the log using the put log statement. So yeah, let's not look at the output data set. We're not really concerned with that. So here we go, we got our note. The height is not a valid number, it has been set to missing. And so this is what we were trying to do. Obviously there's only one observation, so you're only going to get that output at once. Well, of course, now let's change the height entry to be a 70, which is a valid height really. And we'll see this time we should have something different in the log. And also we have a number there, which makes sense. The height is a valid number. It has been set to 70. So yeah, that's exactly what we wanted to show with the put log. We also are now gonna, look at how we're going to use the put log statement to write a value of a variable. And so yeah, let's update. So I said I was going to have, let's call this class updated. This is going to be my work library data set, and I'm going to set, as we've shown in a previous video, I'm going to take SAS help.class and add this data set, which we just made, called new student, on the end of it. And so I'm going to put it below this section, and I'm going to say put log note their name is, and then I'm going to take the name column, and then I'm going to do the same for age. Put log note their age is age. And then I'm going to run this, and then we'll look at the output data set and the log. So yeah, there's the output data set, but interesting to see what it does for, there were 18, I think there's 18 observations in SAS help, sorry, 19 in SAS help.class, and then we added one on. So their name is Pat, their age is 15. So here we went through each row in the data set, and the log, you know, gets all this information using the put log statement. So you can see how that'd be pretty useful. May not be necessarily useful unless it's unless you're using conditional logic, then it may be very useful, but maybe in a small data set it is useful and you want this information in your log. So now you know how to do that. So let's look at using put log with conditional logic. So I'll take the same, take this same data step, and let's instead say there's no point of recreating this, we'll just use the one we just made. Doesn't really make a difference. Well, let's use some conditional logic here to say if age greater than or equal to 15, then do. And then don't have to, it's not a rule, but I like to indent free spaces if I'm in a if then else statement. Then I'm just going to end that, and that's all I want. So there's no point of doing else do, because I just, if they're 15 or older, I want their name or their age output in the log for some reason. So yeah, let's run this and make sure that it's doing what I said it's doing in the log. We didn't make any changes to the data set, but here we go. We see, you know, for some reason I might want to know the names of these 5 or 6 observations who are, you know, who have an age greater than 15, so, or greater than or equal to 15. So there's that information in the log. Probably more useful than the previous example with the conditional logic. So yeah, that's about it for this section. Oh, but of course we're going to look at using temporary and or error variables to debug a data set. So again, we'll just use a put log, and we'll show you what these are and how you might use them. So yeah, let's get rid of that. And yeah, let's just put log in. And put log error. So these are in all data sets. They're available for any number of reasons. You might want to conditionally use them. If underscore n underscore equals 1, you might want to do something special for that first observation, but I'll show you what I'm getting at. Maybe we'll put log a variable at the same time, like name. Okay, so let's go through this. Let's limit it so we don't have too much output. Let's say we're only going to look at the first of 5 observations. Okay, now let's run this. So, okay, we're not really interested in the data set, but here we go. So this is n, and it's 1. So this is the first row. There's Alfred. Error is 0. Then this is the second row. Name is Alice. Error is 0. So error is 0 on all of these, which is good. There's no data step error. And underscore n underscore is the row number. So you can conditionally do stuff based on the row number. You can conditionally do stuff based on an error you might anticipate. But that's about all you need to know about it. They're built into every. They exist in every data set. They're just not outputted, unless you want them for some reason. But you can also look at them using the put log statement or conditionally look at them. So that's about it for the n and error temporary variables that are used to debug a data step. Next we'll be looking at recognizing and correcting syntax errors. So yeah. So now in error handling we're looking at how to recognize and correct syntax errors in SAS programming. So in this section we'll look at identifying characteristics of the SAS statements. We'll also define SAS syntax rules that include typical syntax errors like unmatched quotation marks, misspelled keywords, semicolons not being there, and any invalid options. I will also concentrate on using the log to help diagnose syntax errors, which we've kind of touched on throughout this this video series, but we'll cover that in with a little bit more description. So let's jump back into the code. So now we're looking at recognizing and correcting syntax errors. So the first bullet point in this section is identify the characteristics of SAS statements. So I'm not actually going to put any code in this, I'm just going to quote directly from SAS documentation, where it says a SAS statement is a string of SAS keywords, SAS names, special characters, and operators that instruct SAS to perform an operation or that gives information to SAS. Each SAS statement ends with a semicolon. So we've been using SAS statements throughout these videos, and starting with the set statement and the run statement and just about everything in between that we've used. So yeah, my source for that is SAS documentation itself. So that's about what you need to know for identifying the characteristics of a SAS statement. It ends in a semicolon. It's a series of keywords that SAS interprets in order to perform an operation. So yeah, the next point is define SAS syntax rules, including typical types of syntax errors and misspelling keywords, unmatched quotation marks, missing semicolons, and invalid options. So we'll run through some examples of bad stuff happening. So yeah, let's look at what happens if I try doing this. So I'm using the SAS help library cars dataset. And let's see what happens. I've intentionally spelled data wrong in the data step, but let's see what happens. So it did what I wanted it to do, and in the log it doesn't give an error. It just says assuming the symbol data was misspelled as dota. But what happens if I misspell by 2 letters? So it makes another jump and assumes I was trying to spell ODS. And it also gives another error statement saying it's not valid or it's used out of proper order. And then let's try saying I totally misspelled data again, and this time it just says it's used out of proper order without assuming that it's misspelled anything. So I'll leave that example in there, and now let's look at what happens if I use an invalid option in a data set. So I'll change that to be correct. So first I'll show you a valid option, obs equals 10. Valid option. And we're going to call this not valid option equals this. And so let's look at what happens in the SAS log if I do this. So it gives us the invalid option name, not valid option. You know, here the log is just showing us whatever I typed, but it's telling me that's an invalid option name for the set statement, or you know, whatever you're trying to do. This is what the error return will be. And let's cover two more. We'll look at missing semicolons. So actually, I'll just remove the valid option because we see that elsewhere. So missing semicolon. So let's take this guy again. And correct that. So data my cars, everything looks good here. Let's take out the semicolon on the set statement and try running that. So SAS is totally interpreting this wrong. It's saying work.run.data doesn't exist. Let's leave that semicolon in and take this one out. So here it explicitly tells us to check for a missing semicolon in the error statement. So that would key us off nicely in the log to know, oh, we've missed a semicolon. And typically it should be fairly obvious, and in most instances you should get that warning of a missing semicolon, or like I did with the not valid option, it lets us know that there's not a valid option there. So we're also going to look at using the log to help diagnose for syntax errors in a given program, or we're going to mention it. Essentially, that's what we've been doing the whole time. Anytime we run a particular data step, we looked for errors in the log, and we've been over some of the key ones. Of course, say you ran something like a good data step. You know, there's not nothing will jump out in the log in terms of notes or errors, but if you're running something where there is a problem, at least in SAS Studio and with SAS Display Manager, you'll see right away errors that pop out like we've discussed. So yeah, it's also important to read the log for warnings and notes. But in the base SAS certification, there will be, or at least there was when I took the exam, there was a question that involved troubleshooting an existing SAS program that was written for you and identifying an error similar to the ones we've discussed, correcting it. Maybe it's adding a semicolon or putting in a valid option, and then rerunning it with the fix in there. So again, I don't really put any code into this one. It's something I've been trying to go over the whole time, and not just in this video about errors, but also in the previous two videos about managing data. In particular, I tried to emphasize looking at the log to diagnose syntax errors. So that's just something you want to bear in mind. Again, no code for this bullet point. This is it for the for this particular video. Again, this was the one that has the least, or is the shortest of the series. But again, I'll post all the code in the description below, and you can also look on my GitHub page that will be linked in the description below for any updates to the code. So yeah, and in the final video we'll go over generating, which is the fourth section covered in the SAS white paper on what's in the exam. We'll be going over generating reports and output.